just doing the calculating the average daily balance for a credit card for a month, and then based upon that, we'll calculate the amount of interest charged. So this only happens if you don't pay off your credit card in full. So theoretically, if you charge something at the beginning of the cycle, whatever your billing cycle is, mine's like the 12th of the month. So I could buy something the 13th of the month, go through the entire month till the next billing cycle, and then not pay until almost the end of the second billing cycle. So it could be up to 60 days between the time you charge something and the time you ultimately pay for it, as far as if you always pay off your balance. Now, once you have a balance, then what they do is they calculate interest for the month based on an average daily balance. So that's what we're going to do. And I've got some of it already filled out, so we're going to fill in the parts that haven't been filled out. So let's do the balance. So this says at August 17th, we have $983.25. And then we have a transaction on this 21st for $14.92. So we add $14.92. Here we got a refund. So we decrease the balance by $25.41. Then on the 27th, we buy something, $31.82. So we add $31.82 to this number to get that number. And then this probably is a payment. So we pay $108. So we subtract $108 from our balance. So now we're at this point. So we need to get my calculator out so I can do this. And if you have your calculator, go ahead and get it out too. Just reinforce it in your brain. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take 894.58, put that in your calculator, 894.58, and we're going to subtract this, which is probably another return. This person's returns a lot. So we get 823.44. Then we buy something here on the 11th of September. So we add 110 to this number. So this plus that is 933.44. And then we make another purchase of $100. So 100 plus 933.44 is 1,033.44. And 9/17 is the end of the billing cycle. So what we'll do is we'll have the transaction will be the interest for the month, and we'll add that, and that would be our balance to start the next cycle. So we can't do this yet because we've got to calculate that, which we haven't done yet. Okay. Now to figure out the average daily balance, the way the book shows you is they're saying that we have the starting balance from the 17th to 21st. So the number of days that balance is in effect is 4 days. So to find these numbers, we just subtract the adjacent dates. So 21 minus 17 is 4, 23 minus 21 is 2, 27 minus 23 is 4, 31 minus 27 is 4. The question is, it's always that month, change in the month. 30 days has September, April, June, and November, so August has 31. So you can also see that I can count. So if I go, if I start at 17, I go 18, 19, 20, 21, that's 4 days. So I'm going to do the same thing here. So I start at 31, but I don't count that yet. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's 9 days. Once you get back across the month, then you're fine. But that's, the days are going to be from the 31st to the 1st, 1st to the 2nd, 2nd to the 3rd, etc. So that's how you get 9. And then we can start all over again. So 11 minus 9 is 2, 14 minus 11 is 3, and 17 minus 14 is 3. So those are the days, and they should add up to 31. because we have 31 days in the billing cycle because we have 31 days in August. So I'm just going to double check that. 4 plus 2 plus 4 plus 4 plus 9 plus 2 plus 3 plus 3. I get 31. Okay, so that means I've done it right. Now, to find the average daily balance, the first thing is you take the balance times the number of days. So this number times that number equals that number. You can see I've shown that by, this is column 1, column 2, column 3. The fourth column is column 2 times column 3. So all of these are this times that equals that. So I've done all those for you. Go ahead and calculate these two numbers and put them in there. So 933.44 times 3 and 1033.44 times 3. So what we're doing is this is kind of like a weighted average. If you remember back in chapter 12, we talked about statistics. So the value is the balance, and the weighting factor is the number of days. So the way to calculate the weighted average is to add up the product of the weighting factor times the value, and then divide by the sum of the weighting factors. So the sum of the weighting factors is 31. So we're going to add these numbers together, and we're going to divide by 31. So we'll say monthly average balance is equal to. Okay, so let's add them all up. So I'm going to do it in my calculator so you'll have time. That's 3933, just in case you didn't read that number. 1996.34, 38.91.04, 40.18.32, 80.51.22, 16.50.88, 2800.32, 3100.32. And usually what I do is I count the number of, at least count the number of things I'm adding together on my calculator, which I can do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that'll make sure at least I don't miss something. And I'm just going to kind of glance at them to make sure they seem about right. So what I got for the sum of all these was 27,441.44. So Amber, you take classes with Mr. Sass. You do accounting stuff, right? So what does he tell you to make sure you don't make errors like addition errors? Does he have any things? Does he just tell you to be careful, or are there any tricks?
I haven't learned any tricks from him.
Okay, it just says do it right. Okay. Yeah, just do it. Okay, I don't know. So I get $855.21. I think I've got it on the previous page, so I can check to see whether I did it right. So I didn't get that right. What did I do wrong here? Oh, I forgot the last. It seems right. I think I did it wrong last time, so I'm gonna assume I'm right. Well, one way to look at it is, does this make sense? And it doesn't make sense because look, most of them are 900. There's only 2 that are 800. So apparently I've done something wrong here. What did I?
You got like $6 more on the 911 and 915.
Oh, is that what I? Oh, $6 more dollars here, which means I might have done those wrong. Let me just check here. Unfortunately, I erased what I had. But let me just hold on just a second. let me open up another version. So I did that on purpose to show you it's easy to make mistakes, so you got to double check. You got to use your common sense, which in this case tells me something's wrong because I have, well, let me just go back here instead of looking. Let me see if I can figure out what's going on here. So I've got those and I have 8 numbers. Let me look at my. So I've got 2 errors. One is this one, and oh yeah. Well, I don't have time to. I'm just going to see what I did wrong, or what I did wrong last time. Okay, let's see. Section 2. Because I have one out completely filled out somewhere here. Okay, so that was. Oh, hold on just a second. My headphones are beeping. I had a student ask me to record the class today, so I'm trying to do that. So. But I've already used it. So let me used it in the previous class. Okay, let's see what I did. So let's compare these two. So 894.58, 896.50. Oh. Well, I see one error. So I think this is wrong. Okay, let's see here. And 823, 25, 33. Okay, yeah, I see where I made a mistake. It was actually in the handout, so we'll fix that. And the other one must have been in my addition. So let's fix this. So apparently last year when I did it, when I subtracted 100, 101 instead of 108. No, wait a second. That's right. So what did I do here? Hold on. So let me go back again here. $71, $825, $823, $825. So which one is right? Actually, I think I did it wrong last. So that 825, 40. Okay. Let's show my calculator. Just checking my other numbers right now. See if there's anything that looks wrong. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, yeah, it's a calculator error. Okay. Yeah, so what I did is I typed in 800 instead of 2,800. 29441.44. Okay. So if I divide that by 31, I'll get something that's more reasonable. So I get $949.72. Okay, so that's my monthly average balance. So now what I do is I'm going to figure out the interest for the month. So what you do is you take that average daily balance. So remember, interest is principal times interest rate. So we're going to take our average daily balance, which is $949.72, and we're going to multiply by the monthly interest rate, which is kind of a little tricky here because each month doesn't have the same number of days. So theoretically, you probably should use something that's relative to the month. So we'll do that. So let's assume a 6%. Well, that's not a credit card. Let's assume a 20% yearly rate. And so you could figure out a daily rate for that. But since the number of months has different number of days, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the decimal equivalent of 20%. I'm going to divide by 365, and I'm going to multiply by 31, and that will give me the monthly interest rate based upon the actual number of days that month. So it'll be 0.2 times 31 divided by 365. So the monthly interest rate is 1.7% approximately, 0.016986. So then I'm going to multiply that by 0.17 and 949.72. That comes out to be $16.13. So that's my interest. So that's added. So that's another transaction, which is in this case is a positive because you're adding to your debt. So then you'll add 1613 to 1033.44, and you get 1049.57. Okay, so that's the basic concept, and it doesn't seem that much. $16.13 doesn't seem that much for a balance of $900 and something, but the same concept applies here as far as the, how much am I going to pay over time, or what interest rate? I'm paying 20% interest rate on this thing. So just like, if you keep just paying the interest and keeping the balance constant, you're going to be paying 16, about this much every month. You would pay about that much every month. And as it adds up over time, what seems like not that much for a month ends up being a significant amount over time. So, okay, so I'm going to give you the homework assignment for section 2. There's a car payment example, and that's one of the things I'm going to do today. Is I'm going to show you how to do a car payment using Excel. There's a video that goes along with it. I'll send you an email with the key things, which will be how much the loan is for, how long it's for, and what the interest rate is, and you'll generate a spreadsheet that's appropriate for that particular combination. It may not be exactly the same as the example that's the video, but you should be able to figure out how to change it as far as the amount, or how, if it's 60 months instead of 48 months, as long as you understand the reasoning behind the problem or the solution, you should be able to solve it. Again, most likely you'd use some kind of online calculator to do it, but I just want you to get an idea of what's involved. It's not that complicated. And the same thing applies for car payments, applies for housing payments. Okay, so let's let me save that. So I have one called car payment example. Now, you can actually, there's a formula for calculating the payment based upon the loan, the monthly interest rate, which is the interest rate per payment, and the number of payments. So I'm just going to demonstrate how the formula works, and then we can use the results of that formula to know what the payment is to get to zero balance. So let's say we have a loan equal to $10,000, and we have a 6% yearly interest rate. That's the one that would usually be quoted. If you calculate the monthly interest rate, you take 6 and divide by 12. 6% divided by 12, that's 0.5% per month, which has a decimal equivalent of 0.005. And we're going to do a 60-month loan, so the N is 60. So we have everything. We have 10,000, we have N is 60, and C is 0.05. So we're going to plug that into the formula, which I'm just going to, let me see if I actually do that down here. So there's the formula. So it's 10,000 times 0.005 times 1 plus 0.005, the quantity raised to the 60th power, divided by 1 plus 0.005 to the 60th power minus 1. So it's pretty complicated doing your calculator, so I'm not going to ask you to do that. And you come up with a payment of 10,000. This part comes out to be 0.01933, so it's this number times your loan. So theoretically, if you had a 60-month loan at 6% yearly interest rate, all you'd have to do is take this number and multiply by whatever the loan is. This is kind of like a multiplying factor. And there are tables that do that. They basically, they don't tell you what the loan amount, but they give you a multiplying factor. So you multiply those together, you get the payment is $193.33. So we can use that now. We're going to use it. I'll show you. Well, we'll do it in Google Sheets since I think that's what I asked you to do. So let me open that up and just watch. Don't try to write anything down, and I'll try not to go too fast. By the way, somebody was asking about, well, no, they didn't directly ask this question, but is there going to be another test before the exam? And the answer is yes. It's going to be next Thursday, so it'll be the last day of class. It will cover some material out of Chapter 12 and material out of Chapter 13. I'll put a review video together before this weekend. I'll probably do it Thursday, which will cover the topics that will be on there. So, for example, out of Chapter 12, calculate the mean, maybe figure out what the median is from a reasonably small list of numbers. Standard deviation calculations very reasonably complicated, so I probably wouldn't put that on there. But I probably would put something relative to using the normal distribution. So we did that for our project. So that would be on there. And then things like in Chapter 13, there will be some word questions relative to, and I'll put those on the review, so you just have to, I figure by the time you listen to me one time, you listen to it in the review and you have to answer it, put it down in your cheat sheet, and then answer the question. That'll probably be enough times for you to remember it. I'm not going to ask you to memorize it. Calculate, use the compound interest formulas, and also probably fill out the first few payments of a car payment example. So that's kind of the gist of what will be on there. I haven't decided exactly what will be on.
How much of a cheat sheet do we get? Is it a whole piece?
Yeah, your whole paper. Yeah. So the exam will be a comprehensive exam, so it'll go back to Chapter 10. And usually what I do is I pick problems that are similar to the I don't want to go to YouTube. No, I want to go back one here. Let's see. I want to go Sheets. There we go. So it'll be a lot of stuff that's very similar to the test. There won't be anything new. So I'll take the test problems and I'll modify them a little bit. So if you understand how to do the test problems, it shouldn't be a big stretch to be able to know how to do the exam problems. If you don't know how to do the test problems, you're in trouble. So the key there is to go back and look at your tests, and if what you didn't understand, try to understand it. If you still can't do it yourself, to get some help somehow or another. Okay, so we did this the other day, so by hand. So what you're going to have is you're going to have a column that's the month, and you're going to have a column which is the balance, and a column which is the interest, and payment, and the excess. So same same 5 columns, and we start off with month 0, which is when you buy the car. And let's go back to the problem. So we have the payment, and we said that it was 60 months, so we know the number of months. So n has to be equal to 60. The interest rate we said was 0.5% per month, so that's 0.005. That's, we could call that R or I, interest rate. Is there anything else I need to know to be able to do this thing? Oh, the balance, the loan was $10,000. Okay, so let's fill in what we know. So we need 60 months. That was the one I couldn't remember. So I just write 0 and 1. I just drag it down to probably cell 61. If I get too many, there's 62. Okay, so that worked out good. So there's the months. The balance is $10,000. So the first month, nothing happens. We get to the second month, and we have the first thing we do is we calculate the interest, which is equal to the balance times the monthly interest rate, which is 0.005. Our payment was $193.33. $193.33. And therefore, the amount that we pay in excess of the payment, that's how much we're going to reduce the balance by. So we take the payment and we subtract the interest. So that's $143.33. So that allows us to take the previous balance and subtract that. So we're reducing the principal on the loan, or the amount that's on the loan. So this $9,856.67. And because I didn't use any cells that, I don't have to use the $ stuff because all of these things are going to be relative. So when I copy the next row down, it's going to, well, I do have one more. Well, no, that's okay, because I'm going to continue to reduce the balance using the previous number. This is using whatever's in the row. So I'm not using anything I have to anchor at some point. So I should be able to just copy this down till I get to the bottom. And that's the annoying thing about this, is if you go too far, so you can't go too fast. There we go. So the key thing is I look here and I've got a balance of negative 14 cents. Okay, so that's pretty close to zero. That's essentially what your last payment would be a little bit less than this. It would be probably 193.19 or something like that to give you a zero balance. So that's all that's involved in this problem. It's not very complicated. It's just to show you how easy it is to do once you've established the formulas and the pattern. So this is what we would call an amortization schedule that I've generated myself. And as we go along, the payment stays the same. The the balance goes down as you take this excess amount that you've paid beyond the interest to reduce the balance. So each month your interest gets less, you're paying more towards the principal, and ultimately at the end of the day your balance goes to zero and you own the car and you'll get the title. Up until that point you don't get the title. And so one reason why you have to carry insurance as well as not just liability is because if you have an accident, you total the car, then that amount would go to pay off the balance on your loan. Now the one problem is, say you buy the car and you wreck it the next day, theoretically the value is already depreciated, and so you may not get back the entire, or if you have a year-old car, it depreciates a lot that first year, so you'd end up having to shell out that money, that 1 year depreciation. And there's those commercials that talk about, if you total your car and they'll give you enough money to buy a new car instead of having you to have to deal with the depreciation issue. And at some point, when you have car insurance, your the amount that you or the amount the car is worth gets less and less. So I have a 2000 Accord, and I think the trade-in value is like $500. So if I total my car, all I'm going to get is $500. So at some point, it probably doesn't make sense to carry collision. At this point, after 17 years, hopefully your loan is not 17 years. So you've bought the car, you own the car, and even though the car, to replace the car, you've taken good care of the car and you love your car and everything, but it's wrecked, you've got to replace it with another car. It's somewhat of a gamble buying a car your age that you have no idea of how well they took care of the car. So you'll end up having to probably pay more, and you're not going to get enough money from your insurance company to give you enough to do that. So you might as well just take that money that you save by not carrying collision and put that in an account to help save for your next car. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a email giving you the loan amount, the yearly interest rate, you can figure out the payment, but I'll let you know what the payment is and the number, how long the loan is, and you should be able to generate that, and you'll email me the result as you have been doing. Anybody got any questions about anything related to? Okay. Yeah, how do they get that formula? You actually have to, you basically take the, you take that formula for compound interest, kind of flip it the other way around, and you solve the equation for the payment. Sort of, it's not exactly the same, but I already showed you this. This is my credit card thing. I put this up here. This is the actual verbiage for how they calculate the interest rate. So they say they use the average day. This is for credit cards. Average daily balance method, including new purchases. We calculate separate balances subject to an interest rate for purchases and for each introductory or promotional offer balance consisting of purchases. We do this by calculating a daily balance for each day in the billing cycle, adding all the balances together and dividing the sum of the daily balances by the number of days in the billing cycle. So the only difference, what they're doing is, instead of having only however many entries I have here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 entries in my table, they have however many days are in the month. And because it's done by computer, it's just as easy. So what they would have is they'd have 818, same balance, 819, same balance. So instead of multiplying each one of these balances by the number of days, they just add them up, because each day is a separate number. You'll add up 31 numbers and then divide by 31, and that'll give you the same basic result. Okay. To calculate, yeah. So what does it say? To calculate the daily balance for each day, we take the beginning balance, add an amount equal to the applicable daily periodic rate multiplied by the previous day's daily balance. So the daily periodic rate is the daily interest rate, which is what we kind of calculate when I took the yearly interest rate and divided by the number of days. That gives you the daily amount. So this is just describing the process that we went through, in terms of how you get to your next daily balance. The key thing is that as long as you pay off your credit card, you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. You want to, and if you don't have a credit card yet and you get a credit card, don't get sucked into buying stuff you don't have money for, if you can help it. I mean, sometimes you end up having to do it for, if you have a family and you have obligations and there's no way you can deal with it except paying it by a credit card. But you want to a lot of people, what happens is I'm not sure of how easy it is nowadays, but you'd go to college and there'd be some guy on campus, there'd be somebody on campus, and they'd say, "Hey, would you like a credit card?" And you'd say, "Oh yeah, that sounds good." And they would start buying stuff with their credit card, which they had no money for. They'd max out the credit card, and then they'd start paying interest on it, and they're basically paying 20-some% interest. And then they might even give them increase their credit limit, so then their debt becomes larger, and then it just keeps accumulating over their time they're in college, and then they get out of school, and not only do they have student loans, they've got a big credit card balance that they now have to start paying off. So just don't be suckered into doing that if you can help it. Start out establishing a good credit record. So when you do go to buy a car, you have an established credit history. So here's just a few things about in terms of your credit score. I copied these from the internet. So if you apply for a new credit card, it doesn't affect your credit score unless you want to, if you take out a lot of credit cards at a single time. So they figure if you're trying to open all these credit cards, it's because you're desperately in need of money. So they read that into it. So what does it say here? There are 5 key calculations that are combined to generate your credit score. Applying for new credit, even if you don't use the card, accounts for up to 10% of your credit score. Frequently, applying for new credit can hurt your credit score. So think twice before applying for a new credit card unless you really need it. Okay? Don't just start getting credit cards. Paying less than the total minimum payment on your credit card doesn't count as a missed payment. Okay, let's see. If you do not pay the total minimum payment on your credit card company will report it as a missed payment. What does it say? Paying less than your total. Yeah, I guess maybe these are myths. I think these are myths, and the reality is, if I go back to my credit card statement here, I think there was probably somewhere it might say, total minimum payment due $15. So if you don't pay the $15, then it's counted as a missed payment. And that goes against your credit score, so you don't want to do that. So frequently paying less than the total minimum payment will hurt your credit score and make it harder for you to qualify for credit. Check your statement for each required amount due, and always pay it on time to keep your account current. So even if you can't pay, you always want to pay the minimum amount. It's not that much. Well, at least for my credit card, it's not that much. I don't know. Paying more than the total minimum due is a great way to improve your credit score. Okay. So it says a high credit card line is bad. So this is, again, these are myths. If you manage your credit cards widely, a total high credit line can in fact be advantageous. 30% of your credit score is determined by calculating your overall credit balance as a percentage of your total available credit on your cards. The lower your debit to credit ratio, the better. So, you know, the other day I showed you mine, and I don't know if this is the same, if it shows the credit limit on there somewhere here. Yeah, $15,000. So, you know, I have a high credit limit, and that's not counted against me because I only use typically about $1,000 at the most. But the advantage of having that big credit limit is, you know, if there's an emergency that I need to use it for, whatever that emergency is. So that kind of brings me to another fact. Somebody in the other class said, stay away from credit cards. Bad, because they'd had a bad experience with credit cards. Because, and this can happen sometimes if you have a significant other and they use your credit card and it's in your name, you know, it's going to go against you, not the person that made the charges. So they had this high credit card balance that then they had to try to figure out how to deal with. But I like having a credit card for a number of reasons. One is that if you ever traveling and having a credit card is good because you can have emergencies that happen. So just traveling within Virginia, buying gas, you know, that's usually not too big. But let's say you have your car, something happens to your car, you need to get it fixed at a dealer that's not locally, and they may not accept a check. They may accept a debit card. They probably would accept a debit card, but I feel like I always think, like I said, I think the other day I said that I think credit cards are a little safer than debit cards because there's that credit card company between you and the person that's being fraudulent, so using your thing fraudulently. And if you rent a car, for example, sometimes they'll put a hold on your credit card to the value of the car, because if you completely damaged the car and didn't have any insurance on the car, you know, how do they get the money back? So, you know, we're going on this trip to England in May, and I'll rent a car. Now, the actual value of the car rental is about $400 for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But the value of the car is going to be, who knows, $10,000, $15,000. So I actually have two credit cards. One is the one that I use most of the time, and the one that I'm going to use to put my car on, just so I don't want that hold on my credit to make it so that I couldn't have any credit left over. You know, the whole credit limit could be tied up in a rental car. You must carry a balance on your cards to build a credit history. Okay, let's see what it says. You must use your credit cards to build a credit history, but that does not mean you need to carry an unpaid balance. Okay, I see what they're saying. So here they're talking balance, meaning from one month to the next. So if you pay off your credit card every month, that doesn't get counted against you because you're not carrying a balance. So as it says, the best strategy is to use your credit card and pay off the bill full each month so that you keep your overall debt to credit ratio limit low and you're not paying interest on any of the money. And the more credit cards you have, the better. So there's a limit to that. I mean, if you have 4 credit cards probably versus 1, you probably have a better credit score. But once you get 20 credit cards or 30 credit cards, so there are all these promotional things. Sometimes you go in a store and they'll say, we'll give you 10% off discount for purchase that day if you fill out a credit card. And I just don't do those. Just because I don't want these credit card numbers floating out there that I never use again. It just seems risky. So this is kind of the rate, your payment history, which I made a misstatement the other day. I said something about rent, but I don't think rent can be included in there. But any credit card, any other credit cards, if you buy a house or a car, which is an installment loan, those will be counted as credit history. How much money you owe, probably, yes.
If you rent from people, then it doesn't. But if you rent from companies, like if you have to rent an apartment complex in Roanoke, they will check your credit score.
Well, they'll check your credit score, but would your rent be part of, say, your payment history?
It does, like at least through like Hall's Associates, maybe not, because that's like an independent company that.
Right. So you're saying if it was an individual, they probably wouldn't send that information to a credit agency, but a large rental company for apartments might share that data with. They do share that data. So it could be. It is not always. Yeah, because I looked that up. I was wondering whether that did include rent, and I'd heard someplace where it did, but then I was like, is that really true or not? So yeah, so even rent can end up being, if you go to college and you rent from a large company that has a complex, and they probably do that because they're saying, well, if we report that to the credit agency, other companies will, and then we'll have a better idea of whether this person is a good risk for renting the apartment out to. And the amount owed is probably relates, I think that's the balance to credit limit amount. The length of credit history, how long have you had a credit card? How long have you had a history of having good payment history? And if you're applying for new credit, again, sometimes that might be positive. If you do a few, it's probably not going to hurt you, but if you did a lot at one time, that could hurt your credit score. I was listening to the radio. They were talking about the financial crisis in 2008. So what happened there? You guys are probably not old enough to know about it, but basically what happened, there's a lot of reasons for it, but one of the main things was that people bought homes, one that they could barely afford, and at the time the housing market was going up quickly. So it was, we would call it the peak of the housing market. So a lot of people said, well, the housing prices are going to continue to go up, so I'm going to buy at this price, and then I can wait 2 years and sell it and make a profit, and that'll be great. So for various reasons, the economy took a hit, crashed, the stock market went boom. The people were saying it's very close to the next depression. It was they called it the Great Recession. And, banks went out of business. Just a lot of bad things happened. As a consequence, people weren't willing to spend money, so nobody wanted to buy a new house. Then you had people selling houses. If you can't sell a house, you lower the price, so the prices went down. They were talking in Phoenix, Arizona, that over about a 2-year period, the price of a house, the average price or value of homes went down like 40%. So let me just illustrate what that would mean. So somebody who let's say you bought a house in 2006, and you bought it for $300,000. Okay, and at that point you may have put a down payment down. Let's say you put a down payment down, but they were also doing loans that didn't require much down payment. So let's assume no down payment. Then 2009, now your house is worth, say, $200,000. So if you sold the house, you'd lose $100,000. Where are you going to get that money from, right? So there were a couple of options. You could sell the house at a lower price and somehow come up with that difference because your loan was $300,000. And at the beginning of a loan, most of your payment is going towards interest. So you probably didn't, even over these 3 years, you probably didn't make much of a dent in the amount that you owed. If you sell the house to somebody else for $200,000, you got to make make that difference up. So there are a couple options. One is you could basically declare bankruptcy. So then they would foreclose. You couldn't make the payments, and you would, so one thing is you could keep making the payments, but knowing that if you left in a couple of years, all that money that you put in there, you basically lost. You could keep making payments and hoping it's 2018 that the price finally gets to above 300,000. You're above water, as they say. You haven't really made that much money, but at least you've maybe, you're not as bad off as if you sold a house here. The other one is you could walk away from the house. And so the bank ultimately takes the hit as far as the difference in the price here. Now, what happens to you if you walk away from the house? Your credit history is toast. But apparently, it's I think 9 years, 7 years. I forget exact number. 7 to 9 years that'll stay in your credit record. So what's happening at this point is all those people that walked away from their loans in their house and just left it there, it's finally disappearing from their credit record. And so now they can go apply for a loan for a house, and the bank won't see it at all. It's like you've been given amnesties. They have pardoned you, and it's no longer on your record. So hopefully now all those people that made dumb decisions before will not make another dumb decision. The dumb decisions were to assume that when things are good, that they'll always continue to be good. It never happens. The second one is don't buy a house that's the absolute maximum that you can afford under your current situation. Because if anything bad happens, and you can't make the payment, then you go bankrupt. So, when we moved here 30 some years ago, we could have afforded a house more expensive than we did, but we didn't. I could afford to buy a new car, but I don't because I'm a cheapskate. But I'm not, which actually is good under certain circumstances. You can get carried away too much, but you just have to think about your spending and what do you need and what do you want. And I probably have erred more on the not spending enough, but am I at this point in my life regretting that? No. Okay, it's stuff. So don't think stuff is going to make you happy. Yeah, I guess these are other factors that would affect your credit score. Whether you're married, how old you are, whether you receive public assistance, what your salary is. These might actually be things that would affect whether you get a loan or not. Whether you're employed, that's a big one. Your employment history. If you've had rental agreements and how whether you've participated, if you've had credit problems, have you gone for treatment, I guess would be the one. Yeah, why is my credit card score so good? It's because I've never had a balance on my credit card, and I have. Now the advantage I've already mentioned that is just safety. So here's one thing I'm going to do. We're going on a trip to England, and one thing you need is cash. So you have to. So how do you get cash? In the old days, you used to buy traveler's checks in the United States, and then you would go to the foreign country, and you'd go to a bank or in the airport you go to a exchange. They call them exchange. There's some fancy name for it, but. So you take your traveler's checks and you'd sign the traveler's checks, and then they would give you they would exchange it for the local currency. Nowadays, it's all you have to. They have ATMs, and most credit cards have agreements so that even if you don't have a credit card with that particular bank, that you can use their ATM to get cash. And so it's pretty convenient to do that. And then they have those in the when you get out of the plane, you go get before you get your rental car. I'm going to stop at the ATM. In England they call them the hole in the wall, so I'm going to stop at the hole in the wall. And that's because these banks that have been around forever, they probably had to drill a hole in the wall to install the ATM machine. So I'm going to get that. One thing that concerns me is that I'm still a little nervous about using a credit card or debit card, even for that situation. You'd think in an airport you'd be pretty safe. They'd have pretty good control over skimmers. But I'm purposely going to take money out of my checking account and just have enough in there so that if something terrible happened and somebody skimmed my debit card, that I wouldn't lose that much money, just because I feel a little nervous about it, because I am going to have to use it probably more and in some place that I'm not familiar with, so I'm going to do that. Here's another little tip for you, maybe in the future. Visa, if you rent a car and you put the entire rental on the credit card, you can get basically the insurance for the car paid for. The credit card company will cover that insurance. If you rent a car, let me just show you here. I'll show you how. If you wanted to rent a car, I always use Expedia, so I'm going to put in Expedia. Not that there are other sites, but I've had experience with it. So let's say I want to rent a car, and I'm going to pick it up in London Heathrow Airport. So I put LHR, which is London Heathrow, and let's say I'm going to drop it off in the same place. I'm going to pick the car up May 16th, which is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to return it June 7th. And actually I'm going to drop it off somewhere else, but we'll just pretend here. So I push the search button, and so it's going to search for cars. So here's, see, $17 a day. I like that. Okay. So for a total of 3 weeks, it's going to cost me $449. And has a manual transmission, which may scare you guys out because you have to change with your left arm instead of, if you can't change with your right arm, you're never going to change with your left arm. I don't use the standard anymore, but I've owned a standard for many years, and I've used standard. It's amazing how much more it costs to get an automatic in Europe. So they use standards are much more standard over there than they. 650 free miles per week, so that's pretty good. I'm not actually going to reserve. I'm just going to click the reserve button to see what it says. Okay, not included in the rate. Drivers under 25 or over 70 may need to pay an extra fee. And you take a shuttle from the, so you take a shuttle, they have the rental car things off-site. And let's see, this always bothers me. In the U.S., a lot of airports, you can return your car any 24 hours. So here they have it from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. So if you have an early morning flight, so I had this last time, we were flying out of Manchester to flying through Dublin back, and it was like an 8 o'clock flight, and you had to get there 2 hours ahead of time. Well, how can I drop my car off at 6 a.m. if I have a flight at 8 and I have to be there at the counter 2 hours ahead of time? Made me nervous. So what I ended up doing was going the night before, dropping the car off, and then taking the shuttle back to the hotel, and then took the hotel shuttle in the morning, which left a little bit earlier than that. So that was another thing. And Usually, I'm surprised they haven't asked me about insurance. That's what I was trying to show you, because it doesn't include insurance yet. Let's read the rules and restrictions. Let's see what that says. Rules and restrictions. Mileage. Oh, here we go. Insurance. Okay, so we'll come back to that. One other interesting thing is, a lot of people in America are of Irish descent, and they want to go to Ireland. For some reason, Ireland, you have to buy their insurance. The visa thing won't cover your insurance, so you're out of luck. But in England, it's okay. They both drive on the left-hand side of the road. My feeling is because Ireland has a lot more country roads. Okay, it says by law, third-party insurance is included in the rate. Theft protection is £6 per day, and deductible varies on the car size. Deductible. So there's then you got $9.55 to $24.95 to cover something else. Glass and tire waiver, so £6 per day. So by the time you add it up, the insurance costs as much or more than the actual rental. So by using the credit card, I save almost as much as the price of the rental car thing, which it's hard to believe that they actually do that, but they do it. And the other thing, all you got to have is a valid driver's license and a major credit card in my name at the time of pickup. And you have to tell them where you're going to be while you're in the country. So you give them somebody's phone number. I'll have a cell phone number, so I'll use that. Anyway, that's a little history of using credit cards to rent a car. Okay. Anybody have any questions they might have about anything there? The other thing that last time I had a diesel car, there's having less diesel cars. I was always afraid I was going to put the wrong kind of fuel in the car and completely destroy the engine. Luckily, they have it so that the nozzles don't fit. The diesel nozzle is too big to fit into the gas thing, so I think I'm safe. The one thing they had is they had less of the automated payment at the pump, so you'd have to go into the actual service station to pay for the gas. So let's see what Section 3 is about. Okay, there's not a whole lot to say about Section 3. Basically, this section, I'm just going to give you the 5-minute summary. It used to be that a lot of times when you were taking a loan out, that the actual interest rate that you were being charged was hidden or not explicitly stated. So you might be just said, this is the payment for this many months, and you wouldn't even know what % interest rate you were being charged. So nowadays they require by law that there is some transparency as far as what interest rates you're paying, so that you can compare one lender with another, or one car person who's selling a car versus another person selling a car. So you just have to be careful looking at you just have to look at the interest rates directly between the different dealers or whatever you're borrowing from. So it's not really that critical anymore. So that's why I'm not talking about it. Okay, so I'm not assigning any homework from section from section 3. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the costs and advantages of owning a home. We've already talked about how the payments work, because the way you calculate payments for a house is the same as for a car. It's an installment loan. You have a certain amount that you pay, that you have a balance on your loan to start with. You have a yearly interest rate. You have so many payments. Instead of 5 years, it's going to be 30 years or 15 years. Of course, that's to make it so that you can afford to make those payments. Another thing about housing payments that doesn't usually happen as much with car payments is that over the life of the loan, you will hopefully be making more money by the time you finish paying for your loan than you start. So even though the payment is constant from the beginning to the end, the percent of your income that it is decreases with time. So that's kind of a nice side benefit. And you don't need to write this down, but this is basically the same formula that I showed you for as far as the payment for whether it's for a house or for a car. So I'm just going to skip over that. And you can come up with these tables. This is what I was talking about. There's a multiplying factor. So in the old days, if you didn't have computers, you'd have these tables which would have percent interest on one axis and the term of the mortgage on another axis. So I'm just going to show you how this would be used. So let's say I have a $100,000 loan, and this is per $1,000. So if I have a $100,000 loan, I want to know, and let's say it's going to be a 15-year loan, and the interest rate is, so the R is going to be, say, 5.5%. So all you have to do is go to this table and go down 15 years to 5.5%, and you get this multiplying factor, which would be 8.17083. And you'd multiply that by the ratio of your loan, which is $100,000, to the amount that this is based on, which is 1,000. So you basically multiply this by 100. 100,000 divided by 1,000 is 100. So your payment would be $817.08. Okay. Now this is a little historical. Usually housing loans are very closely related to what the government sets as the prime rate. And this is something that the Federal Reserve controls. And typically the Federal Reserve controls that to either stimulate the economy. They'll lower the interest rate to encourage borrowing by companies to hire people and make stuff, or they'll increase the interest rate when they feel inflation is getting too high. So when they measure inflation from year to year, from 3 months to 3 months, and they say, ooh, it looks like the inflation rate's going up, or the conditions are right for the inflation rate to increase, they'll increase the prime rate. And this is a graph which goes back to 1992 to 2013. So this is, and all of these, you can kind of see they all go kind of hand in hand. The red curve is a 30-year mortgage, fixed rate mortgage. The orange is a 15-year fixed rate mortgage. So you can see a 15-year mortgage typically has a lower rate than a 30-year mortgage. These are what are called adjustable rate mortgages, which most people should try to avoid. They give you a low rate to start with, and then they'll adjust the rate based upon some formula. The prime rate is the rate set by the Federal Reserve. And you can see how when the prime rate goes up, so what you can see here is in 2004, the interest rates were pretty low. This was in reaction to 2001, stock market went down because of the dot-com bust and other things. So they lowered the interest rate, the prime rate, to stimulate the economy. Okay. Then they said, okay, well, actually things are looking pretty good now, so let's start increasing the interest rate. So they increased the interest rate till about 2007, and then they leveled it off, and then the housing crash and other things happened, and the economy started to sputter and go out of control. So they started lowering the prime rate to stimulate the economy. And over the last since 2009 till now, the interest rates have been historically low. And as a consequence, the interest rates have also been historically low. They haven't gone quite as quickly as the prime rate, but they have tended to keep going down, and then they've come, you can only go so low. So they're showing here in 2013 and this would depend upon your credit score and other things, but they're showing it about 3.5%, I think, as far as the interest rate. But it's a fixed rate, which is exceedingly good. When we bought our house, our interest rate was almost 11%. And the amount of house that you can buy with 11% is hugely different than 3%, because when you have a house payment, most of it goes initially to the interest. So if I was able to buy a house back in 1986 at 3.5% versus 11%, I could have bought a 2 or 3 times price house than I bought because of that. Okay, so we'll continue on with that next time, talking about houses and the costs, the multitude of costs that are associated with buying a house.